Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Thea George and I'm here with Anthony Walton of Iliad Solutions. We're at EBA Day 2017 in Dublin and we're talking about testing. Anthony, thank you for joining me. So what are some of the challenges in testing in the payments area at the moment and what impacts are they having?
The biggest problem with payments testing, and not so much just at the moment, is that payment systems are very complicated things. If you go and speak to a bank, they don't have a payment system. They have a number of systems that make up a payment system. And within those systems, there's a lot of subsystems and components. And of course, when it comes to testing that, a lot of these components have interdependencies. So it's always been a very, very complicated problem. Solutions have tended to evolve in silos. So again, in a large organization, you probably have an ATM testing team, a point of sale. You'll have your switching systems in the middle, your card management systems on the back end. And more recently, with newer technologies, we're finding that things are being layered on top. So Apple Pay, a great example, but that uses tokenization. That's another integration point. People this week are going to be talking about PSD2, open APIs, open banking. And again, there's a challenge there of adopting new technology, but that has to coexist with the existing legacy systems. So a lot of the problems are basically accidental complexity, whereby we've evolved into a situation where a bank may have 6 or 8 simulators, an ATM one, a Visa one, a MasterCard one. Some of the new technologies probably don't have a simulator, so they'll write in-house stubs. So in order to get an end-to-end transaction, and a modern transaction might be 20 transaction steps. If it's something from a digital wallet on a phone, there's a lot of messages whiz around before you then start moving to try and get to the issuer, and then you're moving the money. So it's very, very complicated. If you have a great number of simulation points, it's almost as if you're aligning planets to get a single transaction through. And even when you manage that, you then have maybe 8 sets of results. So the challenge again is bringing back those results. It's taking out the human white space, which is basically where people are sat around waiting the turn for a simulator. And it's the audit and publication of the test results. So what's happening at the moment is there's a tendency to say, right, there's a new initiative, we'll add another simulator. So what you then gain is another bit of complexity, another set of results, some new skills, a new machine. And what it doesn't allow you to do is to open that test expertise, if you like, around the organisation. So I think fundamentally the problem is not how it is today, it's how it's evolved to today, and perhaps what we can do now to start looking at some of the challenges. And obviously the impacts of these things are quite straightforward. There's more testing, and I think Agile and DevOps we can perhaps talk a little bit later about. That means you're getting more and more things to test. That's taking more people, it's taking more resources. I think the Forrester report said 40% of all IT budgets are now testing. Consequentially, because you can't really move quick enough, testing becomes a bottleneck and it starts holding back the progress in innovation, especially of organisations that have got a large legacy system. In a nutshell, I'd say that was the problem today.
You mentioned Agile and DevOps there. We hear a lot about these being very positive developments for banks. Are you suggesting there may be not so positive developments for testing?
I think they're absolutely positive when it comes to the way that banks should be deploying technology. Where it is problematic is it introduces a different way that we need to test. Different people within the development team will now have responsibility for testing, for example. We get more and more code drops, and traditionally, when I was first developing systems, we'd have developed something for maybe 6 months and then we'd have had 6 weeks at the end to kind of test it and hand it over to the testers. It's quite a formal process. With DevOps, we're now encouraging the developers to test and actually define test cases right at the beginning of the process. So it's not a matter of just handing it over to the test team at the end. We have to have tools and processes that allow the developers to prototype perhaps a message format ahead of delivery, and then to be able to hand it over in stages and evolve the testing all the way through this kind of, infinite loop of continuous integration. We can't really afford the time to say, right, well, we'll have to wait for the Visa simulator to be available and have somebody manually go and put a card in there. We simply don't have time when we're getting 4 code drops a week. And that drives the need for automation. Of course, the need for automation means that if you have disparate test systems and simulators and stubs, as we were talking about earlier, it's very, very, very hard to automate that. So, hugely positive for the industry. I think the people talking about PSD2 today will all be approaching this from a DevOps point of view, but at some point they have to integrate that with the legacy systems, and again that brings the challenges of the clashes of the two cultures, I guess. So broadly positive, problematic but a challenge for the test teams.
So you've painted a picture of quite some complexity, quite some challenges in the testing space in the current environment. What do you think are some of the techniques, approaches, technologies that banks can apply to kind of address these challenges and I guess bring testing up to speed with the pace of change in payments?
I mean, what we're seeing in our customer base, in the tier ones and the card schemes, for example, there's a lot of centralisation, a lot of simplification, and a lot of moving away from simulators to a platform-based test. So if you've got 3 test teams in 3 remote geographies, you've got a team in India perhaps, one in the UK and one in America, it's not good enough that they're all testing in isolation. So if you've got some really great WizKid who's done a fantastic test suite of maybe 10 transactions for a mobile phone login through a digital wallet, you should be able to share that test asset throughout the teams so that when any component is built, they can run that as part of a regression test. A regression is basically a set of tests you do every time you change anything. Yeah? So every time you rebuild the software and go for a cup of coffee, you run these 1,000 tests. So what we're seeing is people investing in platforms to allow them to share the test assets, not necessarily centralize them, but at least give everybody access, if you like, to the test assets, and then to be able to distribute them out to where the actual testers are. So a lot of people are doing that. I think there's a big move now to new technologies on tools, which have been around, some of the legacy tools, 10, 15 years. And when it comes to new technology, again, like we're talking about open APIs and more recently web services tokenization, they've been kind of creaking at the seams. So it's almost like we're in an investment cycle. And I think, we're probably halfway through the process. There's a long way to go, and that's kind of the focus of how Iliad are looking at the problem at the moment.
Anthony, this has been great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.